It's a Minefield is an audio exploration produced by us, people who ride the waves of mental and emotional distress.
Our expertise comes from our lived experience, and these are the stories you'll hear, along with those who are on the journey with us.
The roller coaster of mental health can be lonely and overwhelming, but we're all in this together and would love for you to join us. Hey folks, this episode is about suicide and bereavement. You'll hear the stories from two people whose loved ones have died by suicide. We describe some heavy stuff and big emotions, but leave out some of the details. We hope you find the comfort in it that I've found as someone who's been deeply bereaved by suicide. But if you want to sit this one out, that's cool. Know that you're not alone. We'll leave some resources you can contact in the show notes. We've got your back. Bereavement's something we've all been touched by very recently by the death of our dear friend and colleague Kaz. How have you dealt with bereavement, Chris?
I don't know if I've dealt with it, to be honest. It feels like such an ongoing process, and I guess I feel like I'm doing it wrong. Yeah, so I think every day is different. I feel like a lot of me is kind of burying it and not addressing it.
What about you, Hannah? Have you had much experience with...
The closest person that I've had to me who's died is my nan. I'm looking at her photo right there. I don't think I ever will stop grieving her loss. I think it's just something that stays inside you for the rest of your life, because that love for that person never dissipates. That longing to have them in your life again never goes away. You want to see them. I still grieve her loss every single day. I don't think it'll ever go away.
And there's something about the fact that the existence of sadness and of deep sadness is truly emblematic of the existence of deep love.
Exactly.
And there's something beautiful about that.
Well, there's that, isn't that saying? It's like, to love is to grieve. And I think that's so true. And I think that is like, it's a real benefit of being human, is knowing that you can love somebody so deeply and then still love them even when they're not here. I think that's one of the beautiful things about emotions and feelings.
Well, I'd love to share these stories with you about two people whose loved ones died suddenly and by suicide. As you know, suicide's a big part of my personal lived experience as someone who's attempted suicide several times and been bereaved several times and have worked in suicide prevention. And there can be suicide itself brings up its own extra layers of difficulty, complexity around bereavement. But I'm really grateful to have had the honour of spending time with Gab and with Jane talking about their loved ones. So I really look forward to hearing them.
Me too.
Jane lost her husband, Jess, a few years ago by suicide. She contacted me after learning about some of the work I did, and I found her to be candid, honest, and really gutsy. Here, we're talking in the Botanic Gardens. It was a really beautiful day. So, we're here to talk about lots of things, and we're here especially to talk about your thoughts and feelings about suicide. Are you happy to talk about that?
Absolutely.
Let's start talking. Tell me about your relationship, I guess, with suicide.
Oh, my relationship. For whatever reason, I've always been drawn to or been okay with pain, I guess.
Yep.
A good friend of mine a couple of years ago, actually several years ago, before Jez, her brother committed suicide and she was devastated and obviously devastated and was beating herself up about not taking his phone call. And I remember working with a girl whose dad had bipolar, and she came home and he'd in the garage, in the car, and he'd planned, and he'd just been indicted because he'd spent all the company's money. It's a classic. But still, still deeply traumatic. for the family. I can remember her screaming on the phone to a co-worker, he's fucking done it. Like, it's that terrible moment when the thing that you never thought was possible has actually happened, and deep down you knew that it was possible. Like, that is, yeah, it's quite earth-shattering. Because you can't, I could never accept or never go there with that Jez would do it, because it was so, every cell in my body didn't want to believe it, couldn't believe it before it happened, but in the aftermath has realised that it was probably always going to happen.
Wow. So on some level you thought, you realised after he passed away that it was always going to happen, or was it, how was it? I mean, when you were talking about that, I was thinking, like, does it feel like a heavy or a vague cloud that was always there, or was it in hindsight, or what was it?
It's really, I don't know how to explain it. I remember when I found out, I rang my mum to say, is Jez at home? And she said, he's committed suicide. And I said, oh, you've got to be joking. Because nothing, like, you can't. Your brain just flat out does not accept that information. And she said, oh, as if I joke about something like that. Which is classic my mum. Because she wouldn't joke about something like she just wouldn't joke about something like that. But the way that she said it, that I wouldn't joke about it, I just knew, like, to my core that it was the truth. Once I found out how he did it, penny started to drop, because he'd dropped little hints, or he'd mentioned little things like along the way that made sense. And I had lots of counselling over it, and one of the counsellors said that people that are suicidal fantasize about how they're going to do it. So they've got a plan, and they visit that plan. And I don't think she used the word comfort, but I do believe that it is a comfort now to fantasize about it. And then I guess I thought about how he would look at life and how little he really cared about the future in terms of financial security, or it was always, let's treat ourselves, or let's do this, or he just didn't really care about having enough super, or, stuff that you would care about if you were going to grow old. So it was those little things that made me go, all right, so maybe I don't think when we got married, I don't think when we decided to have kids, I don't think when we were madly in love that he was thinking, one day I'm going to kill myself. But it was an option, a real option for him. That is not an option for most of us, I hope.
Statistically, most people will not think about suicide.
Right.
The stats show that. I don't want to sound 60 minutes about this, but how did you immediately feel and respond?
When I found out?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I was at work, and he was supposed to have turned up to work, and I'd texted him a few times and hadn't heard anything, and then someone turned up for a job interview, and I was like, oh, this is getting really weird. He had been away on a big trip, so potentially he could have been jet lagged and slept through, but this was weird. So that's when I spoke to my mum, and as soon as I accepted the information, I just started to shake uncontrollably. So massive, massive dump of adrenaline. And I can just remember taking off my apron, and there was a honey tart in the oven, and I was making meringue, and there's all these kitchen things happening. Just taking off my apron and saying to the sous chef, who I love dearly, Jez is dead, and going, I've got to go home. I just got to be on my own. I can't be in a cab. I can't be in an Uber. I'll just, like, I'm going to lose it. And your whole brain just explodes. The other thing I think about a lot is I know that if he told me he was going to do it, I would have convinced him otherwise. Which is an interesting one, right? Like, and I've been around people, and I have friends that have talked about killing themselves, or have made these, I don't know, grand statements of no one would care if I died. And, you know, Jez was just, it's going to sound weird, but he's just too classy to do that. Almost like he wouldn't.
Classy.
Yeah, like he wouldn't involve somebody else in that. He wouldn't make this grand gesture and then go and do it and then somehow make them complicit in the act because maybe they hadn't done enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It sounds almost
too
polite.
Yes, polite. There was a dignity to the way that he did it. He took it away from the house. I kind of have to respect that he thought about it. He knew that it wouldn't be us, my family, my kids, cleaning up that mess.
Yeah. Yeah, that does sound like he does sound polite. Like he did, for want of a better...
Thoughtful.
Thoughtful. A considered suicide. Is there such thing as a considered suicide?
I don't know. I mean, I can only speak from my anecdotal experiences. This thought has been going around my head that, you know, you have to be in an enormous amount of pain to do that. Is there an arrogance, or is there in that the pain that you're in, is it so much greater than the pain that you're going to cause? Like, how can you possibly answer that question as a human being?
Totally. What would you say to him now?
What would I say? I'd say, I'm really sorry that you're missing out on our beautiful boys. Yeah, I'm really sorry that you're not here sharing them with me, because they're really awesome. All your children, I wish you'd known how many people, hundreds of people, were in your corner that loved you so much, that respected you so much. I wish you'd been able to draw on all of that love while you were still alive and put it in your toolbox. But as human beings, I mean, we don't tell people how much they mean to us. We don't feel like we need to, I think, most of the time, because we're just too busy. And we don't allow us to think that that's a possibility because it's so unnatural. But I actually do think that maybe some people are in so much pain that not being here anymore is going to be better for them. But that doesn't mean that the pain that they will cause by not being here is, I don't know. Like, it's hard to say I'm okay with it. I'm not okay with it. I don't want, I'm not, but I'd like to feel as much empathy as I can for that level of pain, which I've never experienced. But it must be excruciating.
Yeah, it's hard to put words around. Obviously, there's places where words can't reach, and that darkness is absolutely one of them. And there is the idea, and we talked about this earlier, and I'd love your reaction to it, that you are a burden.
Yes, that's a common theme. That people will be better off if I'm not around. I strongly reject that. I find it arrogant, I guess, that you could know how someone else is feeling. I don't understand. I understand that that's how people feel, but I don't understand why they feel that way. Maybe it's because feeling that bad is so, that level of pain, communicating that level of pain is so shunned upon, is so misunderstood, that's the burden. Yeah, it's not a great. They're not. It's not a great. It doesn't help to break down the barriers of talking about it, like in a really open, honest way to digest. It does make people. I don't know. Makes people. It's like it's making them responsible.
So if you were to say that, if you were to say to someone, I feel I'm a burden, then they would feel that's putting the responsibility on.
It's like, I'm doing you a favour. I'm going to help you out because I'm such hard work and help you out by killing myself. Which is just like, no. Does that make sense to you?
Totally makes.
Why that annoys me? It's like, no. Let me decide what I can or can't cope with. Let me decide how I would feel about you being here or not being here. Don't you dare try and make that decision for me. But they know that you're not going to go, oh yeah, and actually, yeah, now that you mention it, you are a bit of a pain in the ass. Off you go. I give you, that'd be great. Like, they know that that's not going to be the response. So why say it? But then people must feel that way. It's really tricky.
It's so tricky. And I've struggled with it too, because I believed, hand on heart, that I was a burden for a long time. But I also I think strongly what you said, that you can't juvenilize people by making their decisions for them. Trust me, I'm a burden, so whatever you say, I'm right and your feelings don't count. How could people be better allies to people whose loved one has suicided? What do you wish people would do more or less?
To the people left behind? Yeah. That's hard. People in my world have been pretty amazing. I think and someone told me this really early on, that grief's not linear. And I went, oh yeah? But it was sure it isn't. You might feel great one day and then you might feel shit the next day and then you might feel great the day after, But it really was just words at the time. I think that time is our friend, our best friend in this. The best thing that you could say is, I have no idea what you're going through, and I'm here for whatever you need. If it's to have a laugh, if it's to take your mind off it, if it's to just to talk about it, whatever you need at whatever time. I know it's going to change. I can handle it. And I'm really glad that people don't know what it's like. I'm really glad that they don't. Yeah. Most people don't know what that's like to go through.
What would you like to say to people who are thinking about ending their lives?
That the pain you're in must be extraordinary. That it won't always be extraordinary. That the world is hard, but also crazy, beautiful. And you just need to keep moving. Even if it's excruciating, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And tell people how you feel. Try and find the words. Try to get out of where you're at and see yourself the way other people see you. Because there are people that love you, and there is a way out. There's so much that you can do if you are able to ask for that help.
Yeah.
I guess if someone said that they wanted to commit suicide or they wanted to die, I would want to know if they just wanted the pain to stop or if they really just didn't want to live anymore. Because I think that they are two separate things. And you can imagine being in chronic pain or having no quality of life or feeling nauseous all the time or all those things, that wanting that to stop more than wanting to live. I think that's kind of crucial in determining whether that person can turn their lives around.
Yeah.
But it's not always not being in pain is not always possible. I guess it's finding a way to live with that pain and Jez used to say that it was like an elephant was sitting on his chest. That's how hard it was to get out of bed. And I know I haven't ever felt, I have felt the weight, but I got it, you know. I got that feeling, and he did. He still got up out of bed and went to work and pretended. To be human is brutal, but if you add mental illness to that, if you add coping strategies that aren't healthy, if you add jet lag and not taking your medication and any number of other little things, it can become impossible.
Gab is a close friend of mine who's helped me through many times of my own suicidal crises. Her relationship with suicide is deep and personal. I'll let her explain it. So, you were telling me that suicide is close to you in a few ways. Can you tell me about that?
So when I was 14, my brother, who was 25 at the time, half-brother, committed suicide who was quite a heavy heroin user at the time and killed himself in that way with an overdose. And then that was in 1989. My memories of him as a kid, I idolised him. He was the coolest brother, the coolest older brother. Like, he picked me up in his Saab 9000 something or other to have the day off school. I'd be like, hello, yes, I'll come with you. Let's go out. I was like, yes, he had a Ducati. He would take me for rides on his Ducati. I mean, he was just like, you're fucking awesome. Brought a stripper around to the house one day. Like, I don't know about you, but whatever. Just lived this very different life that, older, when you're a kid, it just like he was the outside world to me as an adult, what life could be like. We did some dodgy shit. Like, we went to a restaurant in Parramatta and our Uncle Bruno from Italy was over. This is so, like, Italian, but I'm not really Italian. And in his car boot, he opened it up and asked us if we wanted a leather jacket. So I don't know what he was up to. I mean, I was young and I'd be like,
did you say yeah?
well, no. I was like, what is that? No. And then fast forward a couple of years and my father also committed suicide. And he was nearly 70 at the time and did it in our family home.
What was your dad's reaction to his son's suicide?
My dad did not cope with it very well. I think he took it very, very personally. And as a result, we didn't talk about it. It wasn't something that was discussed with the family and it was really brushed under the carpet. I think there's a lot of shame about it, especially with his involvement with drugs, and just wasn't an okay thing to talk about. It wasn't, but I could tell. I felt like my dad had broken in some way. There was a part of him that was deeply sad that he didn't express and share with anybody, really.
So part of him was deeply wounded or broken, but he also died by suicide. Tell me about that.
And I think Dad's reasons were a bit different than Peter's, but I think I don't know what he was thinking, but I think for him it was he was done with life. He'd retired. He was living at his home. I know that he didn't have much money, and I think it was a way for him to end it, but not in a. I think he got the choice. He was able to make that choice for himself that he was done. Life is over. I can take control of this. I think it was a very black and white decision for him. However, I do think he was depressed, and he was in a very depressed state at the time, and we weren't aware of it. We weren't aware of how far he was, and that was a real decision for him, that he was going to do something like that. We never thought because we thought that what had happened to Peter had hurt him so terribly that I don't know that he would think to do that to other, like, you know, to surviving members of the family or anything. I don't think that even came into it. I think it was more of a, I'm done.
How was it when you were 14?
It was a really confusing time. I think because of the use of drugs, I just made this assumption that if you took drugs, you would die. And my experience with drug taking at that point was non-existent. I just started experimenting with alcohol. And so for a long time, I thought if you did any of that stuff, that was it. And that it was a deep, dark thing that you didn't talk about. You didn't talk about suicide, and you don't talk about death, and you don't talk about drugs. That's it. That's it. Because we didn't carry on talking about it. We didn't have anniversaries. We didn't celebrate his birthday. We didn't talk about it. There was none of that. It was like he died and he ceased to exist in some weird way.
No visits to the grave? No.
Nothing. My sister and I do now, but at the time, nothing. It was nothing. It was like he was wiped off the face of the earth. And that's why I think there's this shame to it with my dad. Yeah. And the only people that were at the funeral were my sister, my mum, my dad, and myself and the counsellor. And that was it. My sister and I organised the funeral and did what we needed to do, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, telling mum, we had to tell mum that dad had died. And that was kind of weird. A child telling a parent, the other parent has died and the circumstances around it as well. And she was disbelieving.
Yeah.
She was quite shocked. But they weren't together at the time, obviously having history.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. That was full on. That was a big responsibility.
Yeah. What would you tell your dad if you could speak to him?
I think I would ask him to, who could he talk to? Who can I help? What can I do? You know?
Let's say if you could speak to him now.
Oh, no. Oh, fuck, Dad, what have you done? Why did you do that?
You had a little bit of anger in your voice that felt refreshing to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I am a bit pissed off with him.
Yeah.
And that's still...
Allowed.
Still to this day. But I get it. Yeah. I don't ever want to accept his suicide because I don't want to accept that he didn't want to be with us or be around. Yeah. But fuck, it hurts to be on the other side of that. But I understand that his pain was real. But I believe that he still suffered in death anyway. That, I don't know, that he's missed, that he's loved, that I'm sorry that he had a shitty time and that we didn't see it. And that I didn't have the relationship with him that would have been able to see it and recognise it for what it was. He was a difficult man to have a relationship with at the best of times. And he didn't have a great emotional intelligence himself. So, you know, it was always hard to make that connection with him. And it just, I don't know, knowing that he was disconnected from us as well is painful, you know.
You've been depressed too.
Yeah.
And you've spent a lot of time in your life depressed.
Yeah.
And have you thought about killing yourself too?
Yeah.
What's it like to think about killing yourself in light of your experiences?
Well, it's funny because well, it's not funny. There's a freedom in it, I think, to fantasize about it because there's kind of this way out, you know. But there's part of me that thinks, I can't think like that. I can't think like that.
And in times like that, you've thought about it, which is normal, obviously, but the thoughts come with an extra so much extra baggage because there's so much that could be attached to that, like this could happen to me, and knowing how it affects other people, I would be guilty of doing that. So even having those thoughts is innately makes me a problematic person.
And I think it puts a lot of pressure on those thoughts when those thoughts come to sit with it as well.
Yeah.
You know? And I do not have these conversations with my sister. I don't think she would cope. I don't think she could take on my stress, like my, depression. We talk about it very loosely. Everything is very loose. Things are light. We keep things very light, because I think we have a history of not talking about stuff in our family. So it's just a continuation of that, really, on some level. But that's what, when you grow up with that, that's what is normal. So when it's, I don't want to say conditioning, but that's what you're used to. That's the norm.
What would you now say to the part of you that occasionally thinks of suicide?
It's not something I've thought of for a long time, but probably that it's okay, and that giving myself that permission and not making any judgments about what that means or analysing it overtly, But it doesn't feel nice. It feels like a dark place to be in. It feels like you're helpless. It feels like you've got no way out. Yeah. And I think, and isolating myself as well, is one of those things that I see myself doing. Less social contact, isolating at home for lengths of time, just getting up and having a routine. It's as simple as that. So, that's in the back of my mind. I know it now. I know those times when I'm starting to drift and fall down. And I don't do drugs and I don't use alcohol. So I can't blame those, but which is good, because I think if I did, it might be worse, so I very consciously keep that out of my life, because I could quite happily, alcohol has never really done it for me, but I like to smoke pot and stuff, but that I could stay at home for weeks on end without leaving the house, and I know that's not a healthy spot for me to be in, so I just don't do it.
People who've been deeply bereaved by suicide have an obviously different experience of suicidal thinking than people who aren't deeply bereaved by suicide. Don't you think?
I think so, because it's close. It's raw. I think because for me, I know what it's like to be affected by people who have done it. And then to have those dark thoughts as well as like, I can't do this. I can't go there. But maybe that's self-preservation or something. I don't know. So yeah, it feels very, very raw to indulge in those kinds of thinking. But then at the same time, part of me feels like, oh my God, that's my family history. Am I susceptible to this? Is this going to be a constant theme in my life? It hasn't been for a long time, but it's there. It's in the back of my head, Yeah, but if I think about it now, it feels like it's not as much of a threat in my life as what it was. Yeah.
How do you feel talking about it right here, right now?
It's a little bit confronting, and it's, but it's okay. I think it's okay. I think, the more we talk about it, the better it is. But like I said before, there's this sensitivity around it. And maybe it's more about death and dying than it is suicide. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe for me it's all lumped together because of when Peter first died when I was so young, and that was the first kind of, besides grandparents, experience of death that was confusing and quite complex, and then not talked about. So I kind of got this message that you don't talk about that. But yeah, I mean, other people that have died in my life, I talk about it, but less so the suicide, I suppose. Less so, yeah.
Any last thoughts?
I suppose for my mental health now, and sort of especially coming out of lockdown and all that kind of stuff. That was my last depression, but I was still working, so I'm grateful for having that routine in my life. But as a result, I've started meditating more on a regular daily basis. And not just meditation, but it's also breathwork and yoga, and doing it not because I'll just do some meditation or whatever. I've actually found in the last month, and taking it more seriously, is that it's very beneficial for me. And so they go into that, and it's a super simple and really basic lesson, but it actually works. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. And I don't get caught up in too much of that head stuff anymore. I try not to, because it's downward spiral. So yeah, I'm sure there will be times in the future that, you know, I might have more depression, but I'm hoping not. It's not fun. I don't love it, you know.
It's not fun.
It's not fun.
Thanks for tuning in.
It's a Minefield is produced by Chris Jager,
Hannah Achilles.
And Leon Fernandes.
Audio by Lockie Hilda.
We're kindly supported by the Mental Health Commission of New South Wales.
You can reach out to us at iamf.org.au. And remember, we're all in this together.